you say can and will be used against you, including taxation as theft. So you might as well get out right now saying that they're the price we pay to live in a civilized society.
Oh, that's all right. I've already messaged the governor on Facebook that taxation is theft and that he's a governor, or that he's a tyrant.
Yeah, I mean that puts you right there. I knew
Yeah,
there's a reason he came on the show. Um, Let me just post in the crypto group here.
that was crazy that night that I started, messaging with the governor on Facebook for some reason. He started
Mm-hmm.
getting into it on a thread, and we were like up until 2 in the morning, just going back and forth at it.
Did he answer?
Yeah, he was going back and forth until 2 in the morning.
That is one strange thing that I guess people outside of New Hampshire don't really know is that it's a very small town atmosphere, and the governor, despite coming from a lineage of other politicians, this Sununu family, he is very much of a regular guy kind of vibe, like the amount of like posing at the liquor store with a bottle of that MD 2020, saying this reminds me a lot of
Yeah.
my college hangovers and stuff. It's like, yep, all right, Anyway, let's see, who do we have here anyone in the live chat yet? No one on Odysee yet. How about YouTube? Rebel Science comments, hey folks, thanks for your hard work. I don't know who that is, because that's the thing about like YouTube is a lot of people, their YouTube handles are just whatever channel they happen to be just running. And so like on the last podcast I was doing, some like angry Dash investor was commenting under like fitness inspo YouTube channels, like rah, and I'm like, wait, this is not an official capacity right now, is it? It's like, no, definitely not. It just happens to be like the what YouTube account.
I'm guessing that has something to do with the Dash drama that your
Yeah.
recent podcast or your recent live stream was about.
Yes. And so for those who don't know about that, I'm definitely not going to rehash it now, but there was an AMA with the CEO of Dash Core Group, Ryan Taylor, where he talks about some drama. It's 2.5 hours. If you don't care for the inner workings of a decentralized organization to that extent, you probably shouldn't watch it. But if you do, it's all there. So let me just see how many people are watching this thing now. Ooh, I got a text saying the live stream on Twitter works. So yeah, the Twitter thing's doing well.
I really appreciate the AMAs
Mm-hmm.
that you have on your podcast. I was
Mm-hmm.
listening to one at work. I forget who the other two people that you had on, but you were talking about some marketing ideas for Dash, and people have some really creative things, some ideas,
Yeah.
and it was really interesting. Getting some feedback on that, and then kind of going back and forth between the other two people that you were working with marketing for Dash on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crypto space is quite exciting and interesting, and I really appreciate, in particular, where we're at the New Hampshire crypto space, because there's so much theory in the rest of stuff, and here you have people, like yourself, trying to seek to use the stuff in real life, and it's not just like, oh, that's righteous and the other stuff isn't. It's also that you like the end product that you're working towards gets informed by real world applications so much. And so I think that every crypto development company, team, whatever, should visit New Hampshire. In fact, it wasn't too long ago that Zuko, the Zcash founder, stopped by and was like spending his Zcash in the wild. I wouldn't say for the first time. He's probably done that before, but to this scope, definitely for the first time. And I have to say, like, the wallet that he recommended did work pretty well. The timing from opening the app to the final payment, to scanning a QR code, I should say, for the final payment, was 5 seconds, which is among the lowest I've seen. I think the Dash wallet's like 2.5 to 3 seconds, but like just marginally faster. So yeah, it's a great proving ground. I think we have enough people watching. Let me just roll the intro graphic, and then we just jump right into stuff. So, hey everyone, happy Friday. Unless you watched the last podcast, in which case, happy still Friday. I'm joined by the one and only Derek Proulx. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty fantastic. I mean, it's been a very busy day, but that's the way things go. Uh, Welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown, everyone. Obviously, we break down all the coolest and funnest and best crypto trends and stuff that's going on. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all of which right now. No, you can comment later on as you want. But cointr.ee/the desert lakes is where you go to for the live super chat, which I'll be helping streamline in future iterations, but that's where you go. And so if you want to have a really burning question or comment that you want me to actually read out and not just ignore like sometimes I do with the other live chats, and that's where you go. Otherwise, yeah, you know where to go to just take a gamble. If it's good enough and you don't pay me for it, I might still read it out, but that's how it goes. All right, so let's jump into right away. What's been going around a whole lot has been the Canadian, not just Canadian anymore, but the trucker situation. So obviously, to sort of describe the situation as quickly as you could without like a political bent, of which I definitely have one, is there's a bunch of truckers in Canada's capital that have been honking and kind of barricading the city to a certain extent in protest of various authoritarian measures such as lockdowns, vaccine mandates, things like that. I hope the V word didn't get me kicked off of YouTube just now, but that's a risk we all have to take. And so, in response to that, there's been a move by the Canadian government to impose financial censorship upon the truckers and people trying to assist them, including already, for example, GoFundMe has shut down their donation platform. Give, Send, Go, I believe is the name of it. Another donation platform was hacked. Again, not by the government that I know of, but it was hacked and their list of donors was exposed. And then, of course, there's a bunch of crypto has been raised in order to help support this cause. However, basically, the Canadian government was talking about restricting, basically surveilling the movements of that cryptocurrency and restricting financial institutions' ability to interact with it. So, first off, what's your hot take on this?
My hot take is it's got me
Yes.
scared.
Yeah.
As anyone who is concerned about their own finances or security, privacy, whatever,
Yeah.
you should be scared by this. This is
Mm-hmm.
pretty terrifying stuff that a government who doesn't agree with whatever protest that you have can just
Mm-hmm.
ask institutions to shut you out, shut you down.
Yeah. Um, it's kind of funny because from the perspective of crypto, and we'll get into the details of the crypto part in a little bit, but in the context of crypto, a lot of people have called crypto over the years the solution in search of a problem. That it's like this is censorship resistant peer-to-peer digital cash, or in the modern age, much more than just digital cash. There's a lot of different use cases, like entire financial systems and stuff. But it's like, why do you need a censorship resistant money? And that's a point that I've kind of more made in recent times, where if you go anywhere with your card, it just works. Like, what percentage of things that you buy in your day-to-day life can you just not buy with your card? Like, almost everything is, from my understanding. Like, almost never do you ever get anything blocked. Of course, there's fringe cases. And so it's like, well, crypto works, but like, why do you need it? Well, I think now we're starting to see why we need it, right? The financial censorship angle has really, it just because they can, they doesn't mean they will. Actually, yes, it does mean that. Just because they can does mean eventually they will. And so now we're starting to see this is the actual use case for crypto. One of these kind of maybe even mass adoption springboards.
Yeah, I've been paying attention to some of the fringe cases of financial censorship that's gone on over the last probably decade. More, I
Mm-hmm.
think, more frequently over the last decade, you probably have got, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe a handful, 5, 10 people who, um, you know, maybe like really far right wing people who have been deplatformed, kicked off of social media, and then have been blacklisted by banks.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me thinking, if they can do this to just regular individuals, I mean, they could do this to anyone else for any other sort of issue, whether it be the mandates that the Canadian truckers are protesting, or anything else. And it's almost like a digital gulag that
Mm-hmm.
society um, is at threat of being put in.
Yeah, it's kind of it's interesting how this has really ramped up over the last 5 to 7 years. Like I would say, the cat like it's always been background and insidious, and the online censorship bit has really been a post-Trump era type thing. And I don't like to usually say anything good about the former president because I don't think he was necessarily very good for a lot of reasons, personal opinion only. But one thing that is undeniable is that the world has changed after he got elected because of a lot of forces pushing back against him started to really employ some kind of radical censorship. And so, like, for example, online, it used to be Twitter was like, you just tweet anything. Like, who cares? Facebook, like, anyone could post anything. But then all these disinformation groups started to get shut down over time. And then you started adding, you know, like labels on certain posts that mentioned certain keywords. And then certain words or phrasings or links were banned from social media platforms. That was all during this era. Now, but financial censorship still wasn't that big of a thing. Although the Bundy Ranch folks, their PayPal did get shut down. I guess it was 2015 or 2016, somewhere around then. So small cases were happening there, but then it's not been until basically now, like when there's been, in a way, I would say forceful resistance. I wouldn't say, like it's not necessarily violent resistance, but forceful resistance to government mandates, that now financial support of that has become an explicit target. So we're in an entirely new era right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, with the Bundy Ranch having the PayPal being shut down, that was one thing. But now you're looking at an entire country
Mm-hmm.
who's at risk of losing their financial security, um, based on an edict by a government. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
could be just some farmer out in Alberta or Saskatchewan who, gave $25, right? I think that was the limit, $25, and they'll start looking at your account, um, to this cause, and then they'll start investigating your bank account, maybe possibly put a freeze on your account, and maybe even fine you just for
Mm-hmm.
sending a donation to this cause. Not even freezing the um, the third party organization that's facilitating the payments, right? Like GoFundMe or GiveSendGo or PayPal. Now they're going after the people, the
Hmm.
individuals, and that's absolutely terrifying. That's got me scared for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point you bring up about you personally being scared. I'm sure, we're all for for whatever little bit of credit that gives us law-abiding citizens and like doing everything by the book, don't do anything bad. But I'm sure we have, and I'm sure like just you and me, but a lot of friends and stuff as well, have given to political causes that they believe in. And one of these, like, it's not just crazy fringe people terrorist financing things. Like no, just this person's doing like a political protest I agree with. Here I'm just going to send them a random donation. And there's a lot of people that who in no way, I guess, could be reasonably categorized as cyber criminals or terrorist funding or whatever else that are now under that explicit scrutiny for that kind of a thing. And like a lot of people aren't scared because of their donations. Now that cause to be scared is kind of real, which sort of brings this whole thing full circle down back to the crypto donations. So a lot of these protest movements have been receiving crypto donations, particularly the Canadian Convoy, after more traditional forms of fundraising were cut off from them. And that's where it gets a little bit dicey because the thing is, Bitcoin fixes this or whatever, crypto is the way you get out of that. And you send a bunch of crypto, and first off, it's putting a lot of heat on the crypto world because now it's not just like a, well, this is decentralized and it's here to stay. Now it's like directly, I guess, standing in the way of government orders in a way that hasn't really been done in the past with crypto since the Silk Road, to be honest. And so not only does that bring a lot of heat, but the government's tracking where this crypto is going to and coming from. And has that made you at all like more hesitant or think twice about how you send crypto as far as like donations and stuff is concerned?
It hasn't. I don't want to say hesitant. It's made me more mindful. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm very new to the crypto space. I
Mm-hmm.
bought my first crypto or my Bitcoin and Ethereum like a year ago, and I did
Mm-hmm.
that because I saw the inflation coming and wanted something to be a hedge against the collapsing dollar. But the more that I've got into it, especially recently, and with the help of yourself, Joel,
Mm-hmm.
educating me, this is the crypto stuff is very important to privacy and financial security. And so I think it's important to continue moving into this space and moving away from fiat. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not hesitant in using it. I'm more mindful. I think a lot of people, when they start using crypto, they're not mindful of the different processes, and some of them aren't secure. Like a lot of people will leave their crypto in a Coinbase wallet or something like that, some sort of
Mm-hmm.
centralized exchange. They'll leave it on the exchange and leave it exposed. Or like I started learning recently about shielded addresses and everything. I had no idea
Mm-hmm.
about that, but I think it's important to not only educate people about crypto and the benefits of decentralized currency, but also how to do it properly to secure yourself and to be decentralized and to protect yourself.
Yeah. And that kind of brings me to the point of centralized exchanges, right? In Jesse Powell's tweet. So, um, Jesse Powell, the I believe Kraken CEO, found when someone we use speaking out against this kind of like financial censorship and stuff, and someone responded says it's possible that Kraken, his exchange, will be put in a position where they are told to freeze assets by police without judicial consent, and they will probably comply. To which he answered, 100% yes, it has / will happen. Notice he said it has happened already. And 100% yes, we will be forced to comply. If you're worried about it, don't keep your funds with any centralized / regulated custodian. We cannot protect you. Get your coin / cash out and only trade person to person. It's kind of an interesting comment because it's kind of like the CEO of a company telling you don't use our product. But at the same time, there's a lot of credit that goes with that. And I think that's, let me speak something in practical terms. If this has always been the case as far as I can remember people using, for example, Coinbase. Let's just use them as a bigger example. Coinbase in the past would not always let you withdraw from their system directly to an address associated with a gambling site, for example, because that's against the law, I guess. And so, if you wanted to do specific things, Coinbase would just say, we're not going to let you withdraw. Of course, you could always withdraw to your own wallet and then do whatever you wanted with it. But so I think there's a lot of people who are going to be woken up because they say, hey, I got some Bitcoin. I got some on Coinbase. I'm going to donate to these truckers. And then they try to do it and it just says you can't. And they're like, what do you mean I can't? I thought this is Bitcoin. I thought it's decentralized. I thought censorship resistant. All of which is still true, right? But it's just, you can't send from Coinbase to that. And then on the other hand, you could just have your own, you send to them, and then now they have this digital currency. They don't know what to do with it, so they want to sell it for cash that they can use. So they want to send it to an exchange or something, which then says this is not from an approved address. This is from a blacklisted address. We can't give you your money back. And then all of a sudden people end up in a really bad situation. And notice the link in those two situations is If you're sending from a centralized custodian, you will be restricted. If you're sending to a centralized custodian, you will be restricted. And it's when you're not sending to or from either of those things that you won't be restricted. You will probably be traced, though. For example, if you move your funds out of a Coinbase account to your own account, and then you go donate to the Convoy directly from there, it's a pretty easy paper trail to see, oh yeah, this person who we've identified as XYZ person withdrew, and then it goes straight there. And so we know this person donated. They can't stop it, but they can, send you a sternly worded letter or whatever, knock on the door saying, why are you funding terrorist activity or whatever? Which I don't think the U.S. has taken that position that the Canadian trucker convoy is anything like that. But for Canadian citizens, we're kind of in that area right now.
Yeah. And actually, when you just talking about that got my mind going. And so how do you use your crypto, right? You were saying, you buy it from the centralized exchange, you move it to a wallet, you might, donate it to some sort of, third party to get it to whatever protester or any cause that you want to get that cryptocurrency to. And then that person, how do they use it? Well, I mean, the Dash virtual card that just came out, I mean,
Yeah.
that would be a good way of getting use out of your cryptocurrency without, going through that whole process with maybe trying to fight an exchange to get, some more useful currency out of it. But going back to the tweet, I think that was very noble and actually really responsible.
Ballsy move.
For the Kraken. I don't know if he was the founder, the CEO.
The CEO, co-founder,
Yeah.
CEO Jesse Powell.
And to be honest, like, hey, this happens. And the way I see it is almost like, I guess, buying a firearm. You can buy a firearm from anyone and they cannot teach you how to use it or use it safely or anything like that. But what he's telling you is how to use it safely. Buy your crypto, get it off of it. And he's being responsible, telling you to be responsible with your cryptocurrencies. And, that's something you can, buy a firearm from someone who's responsible, and they'll teach you how to use it and how to use it properly and safely. And I think that's important. I think it would be nice to have more people in the crypto space educating people, especially newcomers like myself, people who are just now getting into it. I mean, it's pretty hard not to see the writing on the walls that there's a lot of bad stuff going around in this world financially, and crypto is a viable space to move into. So having more people in the crypto space, welcoming these newcomers, and then educating them, not just saying, buy crypto, get this crypto, get that crypto, go to use this exchange for low fees or whatever, but like telling you how to use it responsibly and safely and securely to protect people. I definitely think that's probably a missing link within the crypto space.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think using crypto is a missing link in the crypto space for the most part, but using it responsibly is another one. One thing, when we're talking about this kind of thing, the biggest risks, of course, are any institution that wants your government ID in order for you to use them. And so if you buy your crypto where you need a government ID to buy it, and you spend it through a service that you need to give them your government ID to use it, that's basically like a bank situation. So if you want to say, screw the banks, all on crypto, what you're doing in that situation is kind of saying, screw the central bank, I will have money that they can't inflate, but that's kind of the limit. When you cut off the ID requirement ends of it as much as possible, all of a sudden that becomes a lot more free. And so, for example, if you buy crypto peer-to-peer, which is not always the simplest or easiest, but if you go to a meetup, someone's selling, they will give some to you, for cash. Or if you use, I don't think you can really use many ATMs that way these days, but there are some ATMs that just want a phone number. And, again, I'm not sure about how that works. Or there's some things like localcryptos.com or BISQ, BISQ is another service that lets you do that. That stuff is not inherently tied to your identity. And so if you get crypto from there, if let's just say someone backwards trace, oh, who donated to the convoy? They can trace back and just see, all right, this is where it came from, but they don't necessarily know who it came to unless you just say, post the link says, I just donated $50, good luck. And then you just see, okay, based on the timing, that one from here came to this. We can determine that this person has this much probably, and correlate some transactions and then kind of figure it out. So that's still better than, the biggest threat to your privacy for crypto, in my opinion, isn't the crypto itself. It's the other data that you give other than that, right? So let's just say even you're using a peer-to-peer exchange and saying, I'm going to buy some shielded Zcash from someone. And you have some listing, you buy, let's say, $100 worth on this exchange. There's a $100 order of listed Zcash. And then at the other end, there's some message, just sent you some Zcash, good luck, from someone with your face, right, or your name. Even though there's no information on the blockchain that they can find out to be able to correlate, the data out there, the metadata is still there to link to provide some kind of like identity linking. So that's the first thing I would say people should probably be aware of, is just don't be an idiot. Just like don't tweet, oh, I'm like a Bitcoin billionaire right now. Yay, God is good. Anyone want a Lambo? I mean, anyone want to hit you in the head with a hammer and take all your money? That's kind of what that means. So that's kind of the same sort of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, that goes along with really a lot of things that you do on social media. You want to be careful what you post.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that they got a lot of people with the January 6th situation. People that posted on social media, and then now they know that those people were there, and they went after them. Those are some of the first people that they went after, was the social media.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, being aware of proper procedure to safely use and securely use cryptocurrency, incredibly important. And I'm trying to learn as much as I can about that stuff. I had I don't know, a couple different cryptos that I had on Coinbase, and I just
Mm-hmm.
left it there because I didn't know about wallets or anything like that. And
Mm-hmm.
like most people that use cryptocurrencies, I mean, a lot of people just use it like a stock,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the way I was using it. And they just leave it there, and it's unsecure. And then you might find a situation where you might be able to trade it or buy it or something like that on Coinbase, and so then you're leaving the door open to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
security wise. So yeah, peer to peer, that's great. I've used that before, and from my understanding, yeah, it's hard to track that kind of stuff. It's not anonymous; it's pseudonymous, right? You know that
Yeah.
something's happening, but you don't know who it is.
Yeah. And I should maybe do a quick dip the toe into the whole privacy issue. There's so many different cryptocurrencies out there and different approaches to privacy. One of the most, I wouldn't say the worst, I guess the worst is like newer cryptocurrencies, especially things like Ethereum and those kinds of coins that have an account based system, which means you have one address and everything that goes in and out goes to and from that address. And so anyone on the blockchain who sees your address on, for example, Ethereum, and can see all, not only the money in that address, but they can also see the tokens you have, the NFTs you have, like all the other kind of stuff is all visible under that. And that's kind of like the bottom of the rung. And I'm baffled at how big the DeFi and NFT world has gotten without addressing this basic kind of issue. Bitcoin style cryptocurrencies have the UTXO model, which means it's kind of like cash, where you send like $20 to someone and you get you want to pay them 20. You have a 20. You want to pay them with a 10. You send them a 20 and get a 10 back as change, for example. And so there's little, every single time you receive, there's a new address. And so if someone sends you to your one wallet 5 different times, different payments, 5 different addresses, no one can see that you own all that. Not yet. Not until you move them. Because as soon as you move them, then you combined those pieces together in a single transaction. Then people can start to see that. But that's more of like if you're more of a blockchain analyst, it becomes a little bit easier for that. But the average person can't really do that. And then, of course, you have stuff like if you use CoinJoin and mix the coins together with a bunch of different people's coins and send them, no one can really see. I mean, obviously with some limitations, but for the most part, no one can see where that transaction came from. Now, they can't see where it goes. So if you're sending a mixed transaction to, say, a donation address, they can see someone sent this amount to to the trucker, and so whoever's running the donation address, the end recipient, they have no privacy as far as what they receive to that address if it's known that that's them, and they don't really know. It's You can see that they got this transaction and this is how much. They don't know where it came from though, so that's already an improvement. But then you start adding stuff like, for example, stealth addresses, which is something that Monero has, where you can't really see. You can send to an address, but you can't really see what went in, or how much they have. And then you have stuff where you have like encrypted stuff like Zcash, where when you send 2Z addresses all along the way, it's very difficult to basically find out any of that information. But the information that is still there is, of course, the non-crypto information, which is, oh, I bought this on this exchange, or I tweeted about this, and that's kind of what you see. So yeah, it's definitely different spectrums on that, but I would recommend everyone kind of use some kind of a thing, especially if you're going to do anything controversial. And I don't mean illegal, obviously, but sometimes things become controversial, and then the Canadians think it sucks, so then they stop. You should probably, at least if you're using like a Bitcoin or Dash or Bitcoin Cash, use some sort of a mixing thing to, make sure when you send it out to this final destination, it's not instantly linked to you, and then just don't say a lot about it, just for good privacy. And it's not like, if someone buys, 5 Bitcoin, and then they move it off the exchange, they mix it, and then 5 Bitcoin worth of mixed funds shows up at some address somewhere else, people can connect the dots, right? But as long as you make that connection not as obvious, then it's a little bit better. All very, I guess complicated next level stuff, but hopefully at some point a lot of this stuff becomes a lot more automated.
Yeah. I am hoping,
Mm-hmm.
sometime in the near future that, this becomes kind of second nature to people,
Mm-hmm.
right? When people adopt crypto more and more, and I definitely think that's going to happen, especially when it becomes easier to use, which I think is kind of what's starting to develop at this point, is ease of use for crypto, moving away from the fiat, which is what's scaring a lot of governments, I think. And if you're a centralized authority and people aren't using your centralized bank notes or whatever, your fiat currency, I mean, you're losing power, so it's reasonable to have that fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people are becoming more mindful of the economic situation that we find ourselves in, and people
Mm-hmm.
are going to move more into the crypto space. And I think that as that happens, and ease of use starts falling in, there's going to be a lot more situations. I'm not going to say that it's going to be like controversial is the right word. There's going to be
Yeah.
controversial situations, and people are going to learn from those, and then they're going to start developing tools and resources and videos and classes on how to safely and secure your crypto. And I think that's an important next step that is coming to the space, and it's got me really exciting. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the whole last couple months that I've been learning about crypto has been gotten me really excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the ease of use stuff that's been coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And then like some of the DeFi improvements, like I watched your videos on Thorchain.
Mm-hmm.
That's really exciting stuff, and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
help motivate people to move away from the fiat, move away from the Federal Reserve notes, whatever, and into the crypto space. Start using alternative currencies, sound money. That's really important. I think a lot more people are starting to understand that concept a lot more. People, almost everyone I know says that, oh, you should be using gold. Gold is the thing to be doing. Oh, everyone understands that gold is more valuable than US dollars because we're not on the gold standard. They just add zeros. The Fed just adds zeros to the programming for US dollars and prints more money, whatever. Everyone understands that gold is uh, a thing because there's a finite amount and it has value that way, by being a scarce rare earth metal. And
Yeah.
so having crypto being only limited amounts, even though there are some cryptos that aren't scarce like that, but people are starting to realize and have better concepts of economics and start to learn these things, especially as they start seeing that their dollars are less valuable.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna start seeing the cryptocurrencies. Goldbacks is another really cool thing that I've started using. They're gonna start seeing that stuff and how easy it's being used, and they're gonna move into that, and that's gonna cause a backlash with governments, and that's understandable. But that's why it's also important to develop the tools and the knowledge to help protect against that backlash when it does come.
Yeah, and that's for sure. I think you mentioned um, like the awareness of fiat versus sound money is really starting to increase. And one thing, it's pretty easy to see one of the culprits for that, which is, inflation, the big I word. Everything is getting more expensive. The government has admitted in the U.S. to like set around 7% inflation. I think it's much higher than that, but even 7% is quite, you know, it's quite significant. And so like over
7.5%.
Yeah. And so if you
Yeah.
compound that, you could lose a lot of your savings over a few years. And how people don't, realize that this is like, especially when you're the interest you can get on your fiat is almost always in almost all cases going to be below inflation. So the abilities to actually invest to get more money on your money are very limited, you know? And I'm sure you could find the right company. I'm sure you could invest in some other things, real estate. I don't know. I mean, that might be a bubble too. Like there's so many things. And so having a money that doesn't do that is pretty major. And I think people are starting to wake up for that. Um, and you mentioned about like government. It's kind of funny because a lot of governments are starting to get into, in some way, the crypto game. Um, This one out of Wyoming, right? 4 members of the Wyoming legislature have sponsored a bill that would allow the state treasurer to issue a stable coin. And so, under the Wyoming Stable Token Act, if signed into law, this bill would authorize the treasurer to issue a U.S. dollar pegged stablecoin redeemable for fiat held in an account by the state. Um, and so, do you have any hot take on that thing? Because I know the stablecoin issue is a little um, complicated, I guess, a little multifaceted.
Yeah, I mean, stable coins, still a little out of my league. I'm
Mm-hmm.
continuing to learn about that. But I find it interesting, right? Wyoming, um, pretty conservative state, maybe liberty minded would be good term to use for it. And, the state legislature might be starting to look at ways of utilizing the federal system that we have and maybe nullifying some federal pushback to cryptocurrencies. And they might be implementing this, or at least getting the discussion going on this, to maybe look at,
Mm-hmm.
we understand that this is an important technology and people want to use it, and it's actually probably bringing some, money and increasing the economy of Wyoming, and the Wyoming legislature might want to protect it. Um, and I don't think having a like state legal tender or whatever, like the Ecuador situation, I, or El Salvador, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if picking and choosing winners, right? Especially if that winner is the state sponsored coin,
Of course.
is essentially smart.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important and part of a good pushback, maybe against these centralized government backlash against the cryptocurrency space. It might be Wyoming's way of trying to protect the economy that crypto has built in Wyoming. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how big that space is. It's probably small, but uh, they see value in it. That's probably why they're introducing this legislation.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing with stable coins is I didn't get the point of a stablecoin for many years because I'm just like, what, this is just like a fake. Why do you need a crypto that does what a dollar does? And over time, in my opinion, the original purpose of a stablecoin was to get around, was basically to do like illegal shit. I don't mean by like drug type stuff. I don't mean stuff that otherwise would be illegal because you have to KYC every time you use the US dollar. And a lot of people wanted to trade more frictionlessly without that. And if it's just a crypto, there was no law saying you have to give your ID to send and receive cryptos. It's like, no, you only if it's like dollars. And so stable coins were kind of a way you could go in and out of the value of a dollar without actually triggering that regulatory response. And now I believe that now that everything's a lot more regulated and even purely crypto exchanges are starting to KYC, I think it's more like a access to DeFi type thing of how do you use dollars to get into DeFi and like do all like the lending and stuff. And so obviously the push to get a stable coin is a way of, giving government control over people's access into DeFi to a certain extent. Um, I'm kind of wondering how it's going to shake out because right now the obviously the Federal Reserve prints all the money and it's a network of banks and payment rails that kind of send the money around and financial censorship is possible, but under the current financial system it's more of a the government has to go to the bank and say that guy stop dealing with him or whatever. Whereas when people are trying to do a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, essentially it's just like a digital dollar would be just like the dollar today, except it would be the Federal Reserve that issues it, and the Federal Reserve that actually gives you your account and processes the payments. So instead of like, oh, let's just go TD Bank, whatever, like, oh, they shut down my account, those bastards, I'll get a new one over there. Whereas the Fed could just shut down your account, and then you're out completely. And so that's kind of what that's going for. Um, a state stablecoin, which is a certain way a CBDC itself, obviously could have the same problems. But if Wyoming has one, then it wouldn't be the feds watching and censoring all their stuff. It would just be them. And so it's a moderate improvement over that, I guess. But it's kind of interesting to see. I think stablecoin is going to be basically the moniker, the future moniker for fiat. I think that all the fiat that's left is going to just become a stable coin or a collection of stable coins.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see
Mm-hmm.
this system of federalism that we have in the United States being
Mm-hmm.
now at least discussed, that being implemented in the
Mm-hmm.
cryptocurrency world. I think that's
Yeah.
fascinating. That's really cool. And like I said, I think Wyoming being kind of a liberty state, right? They
Mm-hmm.
might see some of this overreach coming, and they want to at least talk about it in the legislature, implementing their own stablecoin, and using this federal system of nullification, maybe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
to maybe try and fight back against the Federal Reserve CBDC that is most likely coming down the pipe pretty soon.
Hmm. Yeah, who knows if it's a opposition method, if or if it's a. My guess is it's trying to have a competitive advantage in the state to get on DeFi and all the
Yeah,
innovative things ahead of what anyone else would do, and just say like, look, we already got our stable coin, and before the feds, for example, decide to come out with a framework for regulating stablecoins as a whole. And so that's kind of what it is. I wouldn't honestly make too much of that specific news. It's just the latest kind of event to try to, modernize a state. But probably what's going to happen is the feds are going to come up with a framework for stablecoins, and then that's what's going to be doing. So that's the thing that's kind of a buyer beware thing on any stablecoins today is there's all, even though they don't have the fluctuation risk of other cryptos, they definitely have a regulatory risk that other cryptos don't have, in this an additional one on top of other cryptos.
yeah. I mean, I think there was another bill that was introduced in Wyoming that would exempt cryptocurrencies from the state property tax. I think paying
Mm-hmm.
if you were using cryptos be exempt from property tax, which is pretty cool. Again, like that kind of gets into the, is it property, is it capital gains discussion? But it seems like Wyoming is also willing to at least look at it and maybe trying to influence bringing some more crypto industry into the state
Mm-hmm.
by making it more appealing to some people. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So let's wrap up with this one here. $53 million raised for Assange show the powers of DAO. AssangeDAO was basically a decentralized autonomous organization that raised about 53 million in support of Julian Assange of WikiLeaks. And is it's kind of an interesting thing to see DAOs crop up as a crowdfunding kind of vehicle where, back in my day, like in the old days of crypto, when you start to have like a DAO that was just like a structure for your cryptocurrency project, right? So like for example, Dash being the first big DAO, and then you had, one could argue that like Decred might be in the running as well, and then there's just a bunch of things that would have decentralized governance. Some people have said Tezos, I don't know. But now you have people just forming on the spot DAOs as a fundraising mechanism, basically doing a giant crowd fund, but then issuing voting rights to everyone who donates on what happens with that. And of course, the challenge of that is how much of the voting power is just on paper and how much of it is like real, is in itself executing. But in my view, the big takeaway from this thing isn't the power of DAO specifically, it's just the power of crypto fundraising. Where before, I mean, people tried to fundraise for causes like Julian Assange, like Ross Ulbricht in the past, and then the Ross Ulbricht NFT sale, and then the Assange DAO have both had like exponentially more explosive levels of growth than traditional crowdfunding, and so it's going to be interesting to see how much of this the government can actually like crack down on, if they even want to, if they're even going to try to crack down on it, because it seems like now we're starting to get into more like big league abilities to fund and organize instantly.
Yeah, I mean, I know absolutely nothing about
Mm-hmm.
DAOs. Very above my league at this point. But I definitely find that it's really fascinating that crypto has this power
Mm-hmm.
to build up some of the financing, the crowdfunding to help with some of these causes, like free Assange, maybe free Ross Ulbricht,
Mm-hmm.
maybe working towards Edward Snowden, trying to influence pardoning him or anything like that. Um, and it's kind of really full circle back from the whole Canadian truckers thing when we were talking about crowdfunding. And this seems
Mm-hmm.
like a internal crypto space crowdfunding that has the possibility to work outside the limits of centralized authority, so that way they can accomplish their goals unimpeded.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. The concept of the DAO, and anytime I bring up these kinds of things, just like the Bitcoin fixes this. Oh wait, you need an exchange to spend it for the most part. Um, I'm going to speak on the more high-minded thing of this. So like the concept is, let's just say you live in, heaven forbid, a town with anarchy. Like there's no government in the town, and at some point people start breaking windows and start running around stealing stuff, and you can't, like, people obviously can defend their own homes, but they're at work sometimes, they can't do that. Not everyone can afford private security. So then the town says, you know what, we're going to do a safety DAO. And so then the town contributes, um, let's just say the town contributes every single month to a big pot of money, and each person receives governance tokens in exchange for whatever money they give in, and those governance tokens let them vote in proportion to the amount of money they have invested into the community. And then so they use those, there's some board up somewhere, someone says we need to hire a private security detail to patrol and make sure this stuff is safe. We have had interest in company A, which costs this much, company B, which costs this much, company C, which costs that much. Which one do we want to hire? And then the token holders vote, and then they hired a private security detail, and there you go. And then that's how you do a private police force type action, is by all crowdfunding something together and giving the people who paid a, so rather than you just donating to support like a government or some centralized decision making entity, in proportion to their funding they get to vote. And a lot of these votes could be potentially like blind voting, so you can't tell who voted for what, and so the odds of like corruption, things like that, go down. And so like that's one example of a theoretical like way a smaller DAO could kind of come in and start, you know, fundraising and actually run public infrastructure, right? And so, for example, taxpayers do not get a vote proportional to their contribution. They also don't have a voice in their contribution. They get their money taken, and then they can vote based on like personhood. But what if you got to vote based on your participation in the system? And what if your vote wasn't just to elect someone that you kind of hope does the right thing? What if it was literally just, this is how I want my money spent? And more importantly, what if you just said, you know what, I'm not going to fund this DAO anymore. I think it's stupid. I'm going to defend my own thing. And then the rest of the community could either choose to, you know, by vote, right? Let's keep defending this guy's house even though he's a jerk and doesn't want to fund us. Or, you know what, let's not pay for anyone to defend his house if something comes under, you know, attack or whatever. He gets his car broken into. So that's just like one usage of like the DAO infrastructure. And I mean, this is going to become, I think, a lot more common in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think all this stuff is really cool, especially
Mm-hmm.
how we start brainstorming and theorizing how the crypto space might be able to integrate with government and community and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the concept that you talked about, I've heard plenty of people talk about it and think about this stuff. I've thought
Mm-hmm.
about it. You know, if taxation is something that we are going to have, why can't we have, you know, you pick where you want your taxes to go to, what percentage of your money to go into?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's totally unreasonable. I think if, you know, the government is based on consent of the governed, you know, why can't I consent on where my stolen money is being sent to?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, if the majority of people don't find a military to be of value or necessary, then the funding for that will go down,
Yeah.
and it might even disappear. Policing, if you have a really tight knit community, right? Everyone is friendly with each other. There's no crime, nothing goes on, and so you might bring down the funding for policing. And um, you know, that's definitely a concept that a lot of people have thought of. If
Mm-hmm.
taxation is something that you think is necessary, but being able to integrate that with this new technology like DAOs and
Yeah.
cryptocurrencies is very fascinating. And smart contracts, you know, voting for a representative who makes promises to do this, this, and that, and vote a certain way. Well, if they break their smart contract that they made with their voters, I think it would be totally reasonable that they would have to step down from their position
Mm-hmm.
because they ran as an elected person to do this thing, and they didn't fulfill their promises. Their contract, right? Smart contracts, and I
Yeah.
think it's really cool how this technology, this crypto technology, can fill in the gaps that we might have in community and government. Really cool stuff. I love it.
Yeah. It is really, fascinating. And uh, the thing that it really does, it's like, well, why can't you form an association already where all the neighborhood gets together, throws a bunch of money of like fiat together, and then they all vote. So what a DAO does is, first off, it gives those vote, like you could always like it makes a lot of that less trusted, right? Where you don't have to trust someone to execute the will. Like for example, 2/3 vote literally sends the money here. It just says this person has this address, this contractor has this address, this one is this one is this. Vote A, vote B, vote C. Based on the votes, it will go one place or another. You don't have to trust, first off, that someone's not fudging the votes, but then you also don't have to trust that someone accidentally, like, oops, we lost some of the money, where'd it go, we paid this other one. Like, you don't have to trust any of that. It just kind of self executes. But the thing I think we're finding that's a lot more immediate as far as the benefits are the spontaneity, like the fact that you can have a framework for community or communal organizing of funds and of resources, let's just say, that is just like that. You don't have to like, let's start a nonprofit, 501c3 educational nonprofit. Well, why don't we do a C4 so we can do some advocacy? Let's file all this paperwork. Let's elect a treasurer. Let's like all this stuff to get together and get something done. Whereas with this, you just like a few lines of code. I mean, you have like there's probably DAO frameworks out there. You can just like copy paste. I want this, but change these parameters. And then boom, you got a DAO. Throw money in, it works now. Throw money in, you get governance tokens back. Now it just works. And so the barrier to entry of creating your own community governance system is getting lower by the day. And so now it's not so much of like let's just say you want to do an HOA, which is a DAO. You just, instead of some legal structure, you just put this thing together. Or what if you want an additional neighborhood watch service that's in addition to the police, right? Just forget it. No, let's just say we can't get rid of them now, but let's do that. Then it's pretty easy. Just like everyone throws money in, we get the tokens back, you get to vote. You could even have a scheme where if you pay 1 month, like you get governance tokens, and half of them disappear by next month. So if you're constantly funding, like you could have like a token scheme where some of them, like if it's not just if you voted this month you have a vote, if you paid this month you have a vote, if you didn't you don't. It could be, well, you have a half vote if you didn't pay this month but you paid last month, and if you did pay both months then you'd have a 1.5 vote. You could have some kind of a scheme to just reward long-term contributions, but still, like, there's so many different ways you could set this thing up, and it's a turnkey solution. It just runs on its own, and that's kind of the cool part about it, is you could just come together with a turnkey solution, and then there you go.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, kind of if you pitch in
Mm-hmm.
1 month and they don't, that kind of thing can stop people from who bought in and then moved away from the community, right, and kind of stop them
Mm-hmm.
from having influence in the community. Maybe they could still have influence, but not as much, that type of thing. So it it's definitely the integration with this technology and community and governments. You know, it can help ease some of the tensions and some of the headaches that are associated with politics.
Mm-hmm.
I hate politics. I absolutely hate it. But it's at the point
Well,
in this world
politics
that
hates you right back there, buddy.
yeah, but it's impossible to ignore it. I mean, in
Mm-hmm.
order to protect yourself and be informed about the world around you, you kind of have to inject yourself into this political sphere, and it's a headache. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And community DAOs are might be a potential method of reducing those headaches.
Yeah, and eventually you could move on to greater things. I would like there to be communities run exclusively by public service DAOs. And like I would really like there to be for every major system that we need as a community, that we've determined that we need rather. Like for example, police, let's just or security, fire protection would be another one. And let's just say infrastructure and then charity. Like let's just say we have like four different DAOs. You contribute to whatever, you get voting power over that, and then, it kind of goes the way it goes. And more importantly, if you can kind of do that and enough people are dissatisfied with one of those things, let's just say the infrastructure isn't being taken care of well enough and people just keep losing their voting. They're just like, I voted for this guy not to get funded. He keeps getting voted. Whatever. I'm going to just not participate anymore. And so then they kind of drop out, and that DAO gets smaller. And then the disaffected people say, screw that. We're going to do another infrastructure DAO. Boom. All of a sudden, you got another one. We know how to do it right, and they're going to vote for a different provider for just their little piece of the street, And then there's free market competition between providers in just a pretty seamless kind of a way. And I mean, I know it's funny because a lot of these sort of ideas, I've heard them from like a lot of anarcho-capitalist writing and theory and stuff like that, but it would just work like this. And I always conceptually bought it, but I never practically bought it fully. I just was like, yeah, I think that's great. But is that really going to work out though? But now I'm starting to see, oh yeah, I think it is going to work out. Like these ideas might have just been before their time as far as like the technology had to catch up to make it feasible practically to implement a lot of like actually voluntary government. And that's why I'm really excited about crypto, because it is a voluntary system. It's technology that enables more efficient and better voluntary systems. And yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is really exciting. I have a lot of optimism for the future.
Mm-hmm.
But in order for, you know, this this path that is laid before us, in order for us to start walking it, we have to commit. We have to get more people to walk the path as well, right? We can't walk it alone.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people that leave the old worlds, right. You had a lot of people come to the Americas seeking freedom and a new life, right? They left the old world,
Mm-hmm.
leaving the old world, the old financial systems, and coming to this new world where we can forge a destiny. And
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of room for corruption and uh, misuse, right? Yeah, corruption. Say it
Yeah.
twice, because that's exactly what's going to happen with like CBDCs and stuff like that. In this
Mm-hmm.
crypto world, it can be used for evil, right? And it's important that we find more people to walk this good path, right? Educate them, and find new ways, right? And talk to each other and communicate and theorize, and maybe do some war gaming, scenarios in our heads, thinking about different ways things might go down, right? And that becomes more easier, right, with this technology and with other technologies that are being advanced, right? We're in the information age. Information is instantaneous, so it's becoming a lot easier for that kind of discussion to be had. And now we can really come together and decide, right, as
Mm-hmm.
communities, to look at, is this the way that we want to go? Do we want to go, right, this voluntarism route and have voluntary government and try to remove violence from the system? Or do we want to, kind of remain with some of the elements of the old financial systems in
Yeah,
the
that
old
makes
world?
sense. Well, we did get one super chat I want to point out there. Do you let family, friends, or a spouse know about your crypto? If you're seeing someone new, on what date do you broach the subject? Well, I'll let you go first on that one. I think about it because it's been a long time since I had to worry about that. But yeah.
Well, my first actual crypto purchase,
Mm-hmm.
I went to a diner in New
Mm-hmm.
Hampshire, and I bought my breakfast using cryptocurrency. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually, the same exact day, I went out and I bought a book from a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I did, it was my first experience, right? My first
Mm-hmm.
time using this technology, and it was new and exciting, and it was adventurous, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I went on Twitter and Facebook and I posted about it, and I
Yeah.
think that is reasonable, right? I think that's something
Yeah.
reasonable to use. And I told friends and family, but
Mm-hmm.
I think moving forward, right, and it when it becomes more normalized and easy use happens, right, using crypto is going to be a lot like paying with dollars. You don't tell everybody what your purchases are. You don't go around. I mean, even your friends, your spouse, your family, right? You don't tell them what you purchase. I don't go around telling my girlfriend that I bought
Mm-hmm.
a carton of eggs at the grocery store or anything like that. So I think if you have a new experience and it's exciting, right, and it's innocent, right, like
Mm-hmm.
buying breakfast at a diner, then I don't
Mm-hmm.
see any reason why you can't share that experience with the world, and that might help new people get involved in the space.
Yeah.
But I mean, anything else, I don't know if it's necessary. I don't think relationships are built on trust. So
Of
if
course.
you don't trust your friends, your family, your spouse, or whatever, then you might want to rethink those relationships.
Yeah. And obviously, you don't want to be tweeting, I just bought Molly on the Silk Road, you know? Like, obviously, that's more of a retro reference. But yeah, I think that's kind of funny. Like, in the early days, I think it was much more controversial. It was much more controversial to want to express it, especially the first date situation of like, hey, so I'm into this thing called Bitcoin. Like, what? Today, it's very well known. In fact, I think if you talk a little bit about crypto, it either makes you stereotypical as a young male in a lot of ways, or it even makes might get you some gold diggers. I might be like, oh, okay, all right. How long have you been in again? Does the math, okay? Which it's funny because I'd be the ultimate false flag gold digger bait because like how long you been in crypto? 9 years, and then they think I must be like a trillionaire or something. But I'm quite the humble, modest person.
Yeah.
Despite that, it's like good luck if you think I got this big pot of money to give to anyone. But
And you've had tons of news articles made about you too, so you definitely
yeah,
are this red herring here.
yeah, for sure. But I mean, you'll see me grace the door of a Walmart on many occasions. It's like, well, that guy can't be balling out of control if he's in Walmart. But it is what it is. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. Where do you want people to go to follow you or whatever you're doing, or give it just a shout out to some other place if you don't have anywhere for yourself?
I'm on Twitter, Derek underscore Proulx on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
But I would actually, if you want to use cryptocurrency, right, in the real world
Mm-hmm.
and other alternative currencies like gold backs or whatever, New Hampshire is the place to do that. So I would say go ahead and follow at FSP on Twitter or check out fsp.org. And if you want to be part of the space, might be a place to start looking.
Yeah, let me check the Free State Project Twitter handle is at Free State NH.
Oh,
And
okay.
so
Yeah.
yeah, they got a lot of interesting stuff going on. Um, yeah, it's kind of interesting how like the worlds kind of diverge and are reconnecting. Like as far as it was a bunch of just like super crazy coder nerds who were into crypto and radical libertarians, and then it became just a lot of other people, and now it's converging back into the cause of liberty. Whereas before it's like it was always about that, but now it's becoming more and more like apparent that this is what it's useful for. I think it's turning more crypto people pro liberty who weren't necessarily pro liberty. Although I don't know why you'd be in crypto if you aren't. But then it's also turning a lot of liberty people pro crypto because every cool thing they want to do, you have to go through crypto these days. So it is kind
Yeah.
of what it is. Well, yeah, thanks a bunch for being on. And yeah, everyone like, comment, share, subscribe. Um, leave a little comment, leave a little tip afterwards, whatever. And thank Derek for being on. Follow him on Twitter. I promise you won't be too spicy. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next week.